If I tell my boss that I like him, he kind of knows that I'm lying a bit, right? And then he looks at me as being dishonest. I'm not giving him the truth. But then if I say I dislike him, I mean, who wants to tell your boss that you don't like him as a person, right? Hi everyone, welcome to Can We Just Talk, the Career Edition. I'm Cheryl, the digital editor of Her World. As you might know, Can We Just Talk is a Her World series where we provide inspiration and useful insights to help you live your best life. The Career Edition is based on our 2024 What Women Want survey, which is an island-wide questionnaire where we profiled Singaporean women between 25 to 40 to find out their thoughts on the most pressing issues when it comes to the career and the workplace. And today's topic will be on toxic work environments. So my guest with me today is Shireena.
Thanks for having me. I am a certified life coach, image consultant, corporate maternity coach, and the founder of Getting to Happy, which is a movement in Singapore to inspire our community to live happier, healthier lives. So I've had my practice since 2008, and there's so many kinds of people that walk through my door, and it's not always they're coming just because of a toxic work environment, but it is something that comes up in conversation. I think we're more aware now of what is a toxic environment and what we want. We want work-life balance, we want to feel valued, so it is definitely coming up in conversations now.
Yeah, is it a very big issue? Because when we did our survey, right, 54% of our respondents have said they've quit without ever having another job lined up, where 63% of that group cited a toxic work environment and 57% cited burnout as a reason for quitting. And then 51% of these respondents have also said that toxic workplace environments was a deal breaker. I want to talk to you about what actually defines a toxic work environment, because I feel like it's a term that people throw out very easily,
Yes.
right? That person is toxic, my boss is toxic, my friend is toxic, the work environment is toxic. But what is the actual difference between a work environment that's really harmful to your career progression versus maybe you just kind of need to build a little bit more mental resilience?
I think that's a great thing to talk about. And it is this blurry line, right, between someone saying, my environment's toxic and I'm actually stressed out at work.
Yeah.
So when we look at the stress that comes up and arises at the workplace, we have to first define it as, is it short-term stress or long-term stress? So short-term stress isn't actually really bad for us. Short-term stress keeps us energized, motivated. We're inclined to make changes in our lives or at the workplace when we are sometimes under stress.
Yeah.
Long-term stress is the one that we don't ever see the light of day from. And that turns into burnout. And that could be the result of, like you said, a toxic work environment, which could be harassment at work, poor leadership, maybe high turnover, unrealistic deadlines and expectations, poor communication within the organization. So I think it's first determining that short-term or long-term stress. The long-term stress is the one that we want to avoid, which then turns into eventual burnout.
What are some examples of short-term stress?
If you're working on a project where you have to scramble to finish something for a client and you know that we have to submit something in 1 month, so you're all putting your head down, you're working extra long hours, that's okay because you know it's going to end at some place. But when you're unable to see the end, when it seems like every day you're coming in exhausted, there's fatigue, there's a sense of hopelessness or just that depression about being at work, or you're triggered by a colleague, or you're triggered by a boss, or the way in which you're being communicated to, that's different.
What are some signs I should start looking out for if the way that I'm coping with, even with the short-term stress, is maybe I can't deal with it as much?
I think there's 3 things we can look at is the physical and mental exhaustion. So if just getting out of bed is impossible, that's a sign. Or your daily tasks like taking a shower or getting lunch is hard. You're just exhausted physically and mentally, and you're not able to sleep, whether it's falling asleep or sustaining sleep.
Yeah.
So that's one of the key indicators. Number 2 is your mood is changing, your personality. You're outgoing and you love hanging out with your friends, and suddenly you don't want to go out, you just want to go home, you want to lie under the covers. That's a different personality. If they're changing from who they were and who they are right now, that's an indicator too that they might be feeling depressed or having anxiety.
Yeah.
And then the third, of course, is you're not feeling great, so you're not bringing your best to work. If you don't sleep, your productivity, your performance, that's going to also decrease. So with the combination of the lack of sleep, that physical and mental exhaustion, your mood is changing, you don't want to go out, you barely want to eat, that's physical and mental health. When those are affected, you need to, raise your hand and become aware and say, okay, what is in my control to change? and what's not.
When I was going through my own bouts of depression, I was facing a very difficult work environment. A big factor for me was I stopped eating.
Yeah.
I couldn't sleep, as you mentioned.
Yeah,
But at
yeah.
that point of time, you just think that, oh, that's just work stress. And then when it kept getting very persistent, like the biggest thing for me was brain fog, which I never had to deal with before. So it's like I would used to be able to go into a brainstorm or like a pitch meeting and I could easily, like even if I didn't prepare for it, just come up with like 5-6 ideas. It started becoming things where like a deck that would take me 1 or 2 days to create would now take me a week. And then the most obvious physical sign for me was crying. I cried every single day for a month straight. I guess for someone who ends up facing a situation like me, what do you think that person should do instead to help them kind of have that self-awareness that something is wrong?
First, identify it. Okay, supposing it's an individual. Then the next step is try before quitting to deal on your own, in your control, with that issue.
Yeah.
So it's finding a safe person, it's finding a trusted person in the organization that you can talk to. We're very fearful nowadays. We're afraid of the repercussions of doing that. But if we, for example, quit without trying, we actually carry that fear to the next job we're going to go to. There are situations too where people say, I can't, there's no one to talk to. My company is only 5 people, or it's a startup and everyone is making my life miserable. It can happen. Are you going to stay? Is this important for you? Is the job and the money, is it the most important thing? Is your physical and mental health being affected? There are times, like you said, where you were crying inconsolably or that you were depressed.
But I didn't have a job lined up at that point, so I just had to kind of suck it up, right? Because the alternative was to quit. But then if I didn't have a job lined up, then it's like I had rent to pay, I had bills to pay and everything. So I had to kind of manage somehow.
And that's a tough decision to make, right? And we talked about this earlier, that it's depressive to be in that situation where it's a toxic environment. But on the other hand, quitting and then having to rely on your savings, if you can manage it and say, okay, I can handle X number of months without a salary, great. If you say, I can't do that, and then not finding the job that you want, can be, again, the other stress that's going to enter into your life. That's another problem that you're going to deal with. It doesn't mean to say you just suck it up every time. When your physical and mental health is really affected and you feel like absolutely hopeless, there's no end in sight, nobody can help you, and it's physically affecting you, then you need to seek out help, whether it's professionally within the organization or externally.
But I guess quitting without communicating first, is that a trend that you see with people right now? And secondly, sometimes it's very easy to say like, hey, you need to communicate. But I think most people understand that, but don't really have the tools to know how to communicate to someone that you're not good with something, right? Because you can't just go to your boss and be like, I don't like this. I don't want to do this because I think it's unfair. No boss, even if they're in the wrong, is going to take that easily, right?
Totally.
How do we kind of mitigate those situations?
I think it's also about looking at your job scope. You are given a job, you worked for that job, you've got the job that you wanted. And looking at it and saying, do I want this? Is this in line with my values? Yes, am I being treated fairly? Am I doing my job but being asked to do things that are not my job scope? As a working individual, we need to be able to do that. And we need to be able to look at it and say, who else can I go to? And how do I say it without saying, I give up? I want to say, this is my job, this is what I do. I want my job. I want my salary. This is important to me, but I don't agree with this. How do I manage it? Please, organization, help me to manage this. And they might say, well, you have to do everything. And you can say, okay, this isn't aligned with my values. It's affecting my health. I take the decision to leave because I have enough savings and this is a educated decision that I'm making. What you were referring to earlier, which is the I give up. I think with younger people, it is more common now. It's not to say that people are just not trying as hard. It's just that we also know nowadays that we want work-life balance. We want to be good parents, for example. We want to be there for our kids' concert. So we do want to leave for 30 minutes in the day to visit our child in school, for example. But we also need to communicate in the same way. Hey, boss, I'm doing that, but I'm also getting back on and doing my work. If I do my work, that's good enough, right? But again, it's how you say it. It's not, I'm leaving the office because my kid matters more than my job. No, not at all. Communicating in the right way. So I think what we want nowadays, we know, but we have to communicate that effectively and try before quitting. And also put yourself in the situation of, okay, what if I really don't have this job and I don't get a job for X number of months? How am I going to feel? Am I going to feel super energized because I'm just this free bird now and I can do what I want and live my passions? Or is it actually the reality might be that I can't provide for my children
Yeah.
or my home. There are things that we can do every day to combat a difficult work environment. Again, toxic, where you're being harassed and bullied, no, I'm not. I mean, that's really hard to deal with, and no amount of gratitude work or exercise is going to help combat that.
Yeah, in this instance, we're saying like no to workplace harassment, no bullying, nothing illegal, no discrimination.
Yes. We're talking about challenging work environments, right? Again, there are things that we can do every day that are within our control. And as a life and happiness coach, and this whole movement towards living happier lives also means that we take responsibility for our happiness. So we know, for example, sleep is super, super important. But I get clients all the time who say, I'm so burnt out, but I watch Netflix till 3 a.m. I'm like, okay, like, you know it, you identify it, but you're not making the change. And happiness takes effort, or combating burnout takes effort. So sleep, go to sleep on time, implement a sleep routine. For clients that are in a very stressful work situation, I recommend to them, download and create a playlist of 2-minute songs, 3-minute, 4-minute, 5-minute, that you can use in the day, in your office, when you're sitting down at work and you feel burnt and stressed out. Breathing techniques, science shows, can help us get to a more regulated place for us to deal with the next difficult meeting or difficult boss or whatever it might be. Put in your headphones. I'm not saying go and meditate for 20 minutes. That's unrealistic.
Yeah.
But 2 minutes of just deep breathing, headphones on, and that's your toolbox of things that you can do. Go outside for fresh air. When you go grab lunch, go outside for 5 minutes and just breathe. It helps.
When I was going through my own issues, my symptoms were like I didn't eat, I couldn't sleep, right? It was like a control issue, right? I can't control my work environment, so I control my body, I control what I ate and everything. I was listening to some podcast to help me cope with my situation. I remember listening to this one where a therapist was talking about a client that he was seeing, and she was saying the same thing, like, oh, you know, I'm having such a tough time at work. I don't have any energy. I can't think. And he was like, what's your schedule like? What are your habits? You know, what do you eat for breakfast? She was like, oh, I don't eat breakfast. He was like, okay, so you're telling me that you basically didn't eat at all, and now you're asking me why you don't have any energy at work.
Exactly.
And when I heard that, I was just like, light bulb moment for me. I was like, I'm not eating at all, so why did I think that I was going to have energy for work? And I could attend all the therapy in the world, I could have all the conversations I have in the world with my HR manager, but if I'm not taking care of my own physical well-being, that I am not physically well as a person, how was I going to be physically capable at work and managing all these experiences?
It's true, it's these healthy habits that if we don't implement even as children, like sleeping well, eating well, exercising. If we do that as children, we're likely to actually have that foundation at work so that we can think better, make better decisions, communicate better.
Yeah. I think because people always mistake self-care for whatever is the commercial version of it, but you don't realize it's something as simple as like the basic needs for human survival. I wanted to ask you like advice on a particular scenario that I faced in my own career progression and work environments. So I had one instance in a previous working environment where I think my boss was someone where he liked the idea of mental wellness and mental well-being and check-ins and everything. He would have these like regular check-ins with me. So one check-in I thought was just a casual, informal check-in. And then it turned out to be a bit of an ambush, like a management style call. And because I think he felt like I wasn't communicating with him properly, he asked me if I liked him as a boss. I felt like that was a weird position for me to be put in already because there's a power disparity, right? If I tell my boss that I like him, he kind of knows that I'm lying a bit, right? And then he looks at me as being dishonest. I'm not giving him the truth. But then if I say I dislike him, I mean, who wants to tell your boss that you don't like him as a person, right? And to me, I was ambivalent. I didn't like him or I didn't dislike him. Maybe I just wasn't the right fit culture-wise because he preferred someone that wanted more of a nurturing experience. I wanted to just do my work and go home, that's it. So I didn't know how to handle that situation. So I just evade the question. But how can I handle an uncomfortable conversation like this in the future?
It's really hard because the issue is not with you and not in your control.
Yeah.
I would definitely take a few seconds before I answered and I would put it back on that person. It's a strange question, so it could almost be a question back. Can you let me know how this question is relevant to my work performance? Or what do you mean by this question? Literally, what do you mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's very honest.
I should have asked him that.
What do you mean? And it's almost putting it back on him to either, is this inappropriate, or are you asking because maybe for him it was really important that he was valued as a boss and he just needed you to say, yes, you're a great boss.
Even if I was lying?
Even if you were lying. I mean, it's not an appropriate question. You're probably going to get an inappropriate answer.
True, true.
Sharing information is important to stand up and get your point across, but sharing to everyone is not important. So if you need to share it with HR and say, I don't know why the boss said that to me, and get an explanation, that's not a bad thing.
That was a small company, so it's not like we had a huge, like a HR department. Right. I was already thinking maybe this wasn't the right job for me.
Right.
That conversation sealed the deal for me because it signified to me that this company culture isn't for me. Right? And other people in the organization might prefer this kind of management style, but I knew that it just wasn't conducive for me and it doesn't showcase my best work as an employee. So eventually, I was waiting on a job offer. So when that came through, I resigned because I was like, my boss isn't going to change, right?
No.
Yeah.
And you can't change anyone
I can't
else.
change him.
No.
And everyone seems like they are okay with it, but that doesn't mean I'm the bad guy in the situation.
Not
it's
at
just
all.
not right for me. And I made that decision, like you said, outweigh the risk and the reward of whether I should stay or I should go. And I felt like if I stayed, I just wouldn't flourish in this company. So when it comes to some toxic work environments, and when asked what factors might hinder career progression for women, key factors include unconscious bias from managers, that's about like 81%. 67% of women feel that there is unhelpful gender stereotyping, and 55% lack self-belief and confidence. So I feel out of those three things, the first two you can't control, right? Because that's external factors. And sometimes that's out of your control. But maybe for self-belief and confidence, what are some things that women can try to apply to their own working style in the office?
So I think a toxic work environment is the one that hinders this sense of worth and confidence and your self-esteem. I think when you're, again, trying to disengage from the stress that is affecting you and saying, okay, now how do I build myself back up? It's looking at your work, looking at your worth and saying, okay, this is what I can do, again, in my control. If your boss always looks at your work and says this is terrible work and you're not doing a great job, then again, out of your control. But if you're able to say, this is the work that I have done and I think it's good, reminding yourself why you're there, the purpose, what you're getting out of this job, and your value to the company. So as young as you can remind yourself of that and disengage from the toxicity that kind of deteriorates that, it's very hard. I mean, you're looking at environments where you're kind of being pulled apart and broken down. And then it's going back home, repairing yourself. So you repair yourself by whether it's practicing gratitude, whether it's setting an intention every morning. Wake up in the morning, before you touch your phone, take a few deep breaths and think about your day. Set an intention for the day. It takes half a second. Before you look at your phone, before you check emails, you just say, my intention today is to disassociate from the company and be grateful for the salary that I get so I can provide for my children. Disengage from it. That's my intention today. Or it could be that my intention is to just get through this difficult day. It's the same day every day. It feels like the same hamster wheel. But I'm going to reward myself by having dinner with my girlfriends and just enjoy that because I deserve that and I'm working hard.
And I guess it doesn't always have to be like something huge, right?
No,
or like something
not at
super
all.
positive, because I know for a lot of people who always think like setting intentions can be a bit like woo-woo, right?
Or like has to be a big crazy thing.
It's like sometimes it's just, okay, my goal today is to just survive, is to just get through the office day without like snapping at someone.
Exactly. And it's a great skill to use with, with your friends, with family, or in the morning with children. Set an intention for everyone. Not every day has to be amazing. Not everyone's gonna like you every day. That's okay.
That's true. And bad management like tops the list of factors that stress workers out most in the workplace. Bad management is about like 37%, followed by growing workload, which is 23%, and unrealistic expectations and deadlines, which is 19%. But I want to flip the question around. What if you are the toxic boss or the toxic colleague, or the person that is adding all this toxicity to the workplace because of your own unrealistic expectations in the workplace? Like, what do you then do if you realize this, or someone has come to you and be like, hey, you kind of suck at work and you're making the environment unhealthy?
So self-awareness is the first step, right? If someone tells you or someone else has told you, that's pretty big. And then I would ask yourself, why? What am I doing? What is my purpose? Is it to scare the heck out of my colleagues so that they perform to their best because I've been taught as a child that tough love is the way to go? It's not.
Yeah.
If you say, actually, this is my style and my vibe, and I'm just this aggressive person, and I don't know how to change. Okay, no problem. Now what can you do? Can you get an executive coach? Can you go for some counseling to try to change and say, why am I like that? And I do want to change, what can I do?
Yeah.
Or if you're actually managing other stress from other parts of your life that you're bringing to work. How many of us do that, right? Maybe I have to fix something else so that I don't bring it to work.
I think sometimes we don't realize, right?
No.
Because most of the time, I'm sure horrible bosses don't even consider themselves as horrible
No.
bosses, right? Nobody ever looks as themselves as the villain.
No.
You just think that you are trying your best and you're trying to push your team
Exactly.
to do their best.
Yeah.
I guess it's a learning curve for everyone,
and it's
right?
kind of a gift if someone has told you that.
Yeah.
If someone tells you, hey, this is not working. Actually, everyone hates you in the company. That's a gift. Take it as a gift.
Yeah,
And
because the other option is they just let you go.
exactly.
right?
Or they just talk behind your back, and actually the environment's probably quite toxic as a result. Take it as a gift and get the help, and you can change your style and how you want to be as a person.
Yeah. Maybe we can just kind of wrap it up with like maybe 3 succinct points on what you think we should really look out for when facing a toxic work environment.
The 3 points I would say, number 1, is the stress long-term or short-term stress? First, identify it. If it is long-term stress, then you're in a place where you might be feeling depressed or having anxious feelings. And then ask yourself, can I do something about this? What is in my control? Can I talk to a boss's boss, HR, a colleague, and get some external help? That's your second step. Number 3 is deciding whether to stay or to go. And again, if you're going to stay, what are the things that you can do every day to feel better? Set an intention when you get up, exercise daily, sleep. So do the hard work yourself. Of course, get external help if you need it. Identify the root causes of the stress. Try your best before throwing in the towel.
Thank you so much for watching. We will have more videos and topics coming your way soon. In the meantime, please head over to herworld.com or pick up a copy of our latest print issue for more insights on career, money, and wellness. Until next time, bye!